We're now located on South Avenue, right by the Sunoco's gas station, which is adjacent to the Staten Island Expressway. A lot of the residents live just directly across the street on South Avenue. What you see before us is the wetlands, and there's the acreage of woodlands, 18 acres of woodlands that's going to be destroyed for a store and a huge parking lot. And this is a good shot to take a panoramic view of the extent of it. You know, we're not seeing the entire woodlands, we're just seeing a section of it, but it shows you how the wetlands and the woodlands are interconnected, and it's part of the same ecosystems as we saw on our tour, where you can see a lot of the trees, plant life, were dependent upon moisture, wet grounds, and wetlands for survival, as well as the animals.
The homes at City West are built right on grade, and if BJ's comes in, they're going to start building at 3 feet elevation, and where does that water go? It's going to be higher than the homes at City West. I live in one of them, and the water will go right across and into our homes. I wanted to just point out that these homes here also look like they're not on grade, but they really are. Their basements are on grade, and they have living quarters down there also. There is a berm that comes up around the foundation wall that looks like it's above grade, but it's really not. Their driveways, their garages, their living spaces are below that berm, so they are really on grade. See, the berm makes it appear as if it's 2 or 3 feet higher than grade, but it's really not. These are homes from Regal Walk. The homes from City West, which are over here, you can see that they're on grade. It's more obvious because we don't have a berm around our homes. So they're almost handicap accessible. You could roll right into the living space. So we are very vulnerable.
You can see how close these homes are to the wetland too. It's just across the street. On the opposite side of where these homes are is the wetlands. So if we do have some extreme storms, these neighborhoods are very vulnerable to flooding.
Flood insurance will be a tremendous expense for the owners of the building, but we only have that for the interiors. The exterior, our management companies and our condo associations take care of the insurance for the outside of the buildings. And if they have to get flood insurance, which will be passed on to the owners as maintenance fees, it will bankrupt the associations.
This is Forest Avenue in front of us. And for people who are going to be viewing this, we're on Staten Island now in an area called Graniteville, Mariners Harbor, Arlington area. Population of around, I guess a total of around 50,000 people. The Cinemaplex movie theater had woodlands just as we're going to be walking through. It was also going to be protected, but it was down zone for building. And now you have a movie complex, which is fine. It's here, it serves its purpose, but we also need to protect what's next to it. And across the street we have a Home Depot, which is also woodlands and part of the same environment. And what you see here at Home Depot is what's going to be in the woodlands we're going to walk through. There'll be a huge BJ store with a parking lot, and what we have here will be gone. What you see in the distance, it's probably about 1.5 miles away. It's a chemical plant in New Jersey, and it's heavily concentrated with a lot of industry. Chemical, the wind normally blows in this direction from west to east, and a lot of these pollutants are carried over Staten Island, and this is the first landmass that the pollutants will hit. And there's a population here, as I said earlier, of around 50,000 in these 3 communities. And the trees that we're fighting to save, the landscape that's here, it acts as a buffer. The trees help to purify the atmosphere. That's why the city of New York has a Million Tree program, where they spend a lot of money planting trees. And right here we have a ready-made park, a ready-made preserve with thousands of trees, and the priority should be to look at this, reevaluate this site, and to make a proper judgment, not an unbiased judgment, but a fair judgment whether this land should be saved. So when you have pollutants this close to a densely populated area, it's very, very important to protect the livelihood, the quality of life, and the health, especially of the children that live here. I thought it was very important to show how close we actually are to the chemical plants and how important it is to preserve what we're trying to fight to preserve.
I've heard of it.
The other thing is the airport. Newark Airport is very close to us here, and you get a lot of pollution coming from the planes. You have pollution coming from the traffic. Staten Island Expressway is only about a half a mile away. In fact, there's a plane coming in sight right now. It's going to go right over the area where we're filming. So you have a lot of sources of pollution, and especially the traffic. There's all kinds of wildlife: raccoons, possums, deer, hawks, different types of migratory birds. And it's been here for since 1990s, this pond, and the stream's been here forever. You'll see the track of deer right where my finger is. And what you see here in front of you is this orange mesh, which designates what can be saved and what can't. The area between the mesh and the pond will be saved. That's considered environmentally sensitive. Where we're standing now is not.
So that stream is a stream, it's not the pond.
That's the pond, but it's really one stream, but it's been dammed up to create a pond. We have a dried up vernal pond. It's in the springtime. This is actually a freshwater pond, and a lot of amphibians, reptiles, insects, wildlife depend on this environment for survival. The water table is very high here because these woodlands are not a normal inland woodlands. These are adjacent to the wetlands. So the ecosystem is one combined environment, and it's really beautiful. This is beautiful all seasons. So like I said, in the spring this is a pond, but right now it's September, the end of September, so it's dried up, but the animals do depend on this. And if you upset the balance of nature and end up disrupting the wildlife and the plant life, you're going to affect the wetlands. And that wetlands environment is very, very important, as we know from the recent hurricane damage that's occurred in Texas and Florida. In Houston, a lot of wetlands were filled in, housing, and flooding was a major issue. There might have been some farming here at one time. And going back in the colonial times, large areas of Staten Island was farms. So when the farms were abandoned, a lot of the trees reestablished themselves, and now you have an environment that's kind of looks like probably what it did back around 1600. You can see the debris that's been dumped. But if this becomes a nature preserve, all this will be cleaned up, and you can see in front of me the tree line and then the wetlands. On the forest floor, you can see fern, and we'll see a lot of fern as we walk. Fern is usually in a moist area, typical of swamp forest, and you have a lot of fern in this area. And as you can see, a lot of trees had fallen because the ground is so moist. I just feel that the environmental studies, although they were conducted very well back in the 90s, a lot of the information was ignored during the court battle, and the emphasis was on overdevelopment rather than preservation. Here's an interesting, it looks like could be a woodchuck or some animal buried in here, kicked up the sand. So you can see the abandoned parts of cars that were dumped here illegally. But again, this will, if we do get a nature preserve here, this will be all cleaned up removed. A lot of the leaves are starting to come down to the forest floor. And probably another month from now, this place will be just full of different colors from all the different leaves. And it's a shame. This is all going to be gone. And like I said earlier, this is the last unprotected, probably the second unprotected piece of property, woodlands on the North Shore. And these little markers in the trees, numbered, they were placed here years ago when they were doing studies on preserving this land. This is part of the studies that was done to make this into a preserve, into a protected area. And most of the trees are tagged. But despite the study,
these trees got to be very old.
yeah, they are. A lot of them are old. Despite the study and tagging these trees, this is going to be destroyed.
Who did that? Who tagged them?
Probably back years ago, the DEC came in here, or one of the environmental state organizations, and probably did studies on them. Because originally originally this entire land was going to be preserved. This was never going to be destroyed until 2012. This area would make great for a campground, or Boy Scouts could come in here, school children, and people of all ages. They were mapping the streets out back in the 1920s, and they were putting fire hydrants in. But what happened is the Depression ended it. So they were in the process of building a road, and then they were going to build houses here. But the Depression ended it. It did that throughout Staten Island. On the city maps, they have street marks, and that's what the builder's trying to get it demapped so they can build here. And like I said, during the Depression, the projects that were going to be built here all came to an end, and this land became more natural. And what's important to point out here is that a lot of the people that live in this neighborhood, I would say probably 95% of them, maybe more, don't even know what's in here. They've never been in these woodlands because it is private property. And all they see is a bunch of trees from the road. So we're over on the Forest Avenue side of the woodlands, and yet you can still see the ferns, which means this is moist land under us.
Rich soil.
Rich soil. There's a couple of birch trees, of course surrounded by abandoned cars. But where we're standing is all going to be either a parking lot or a store. And to the left, you can see the orange mesh, which indicates that the land over there on the other side of the mesh would be preserved. But here where we're standing will be destroyed. This was all designated as to be preserved back in the 90s. And in 2012, the court decision determined that the owner of property could build. And what's changed in this environment from 2011 to 2012? So we're gonna be exiting right behind the movie complex where we entered. And a couple of years ago, before they built this movie complex, this was all woodlands right up to Forest Avenue. And you're going to have a huge parking lot. And that's going to be, what you see here is just a mirror image of what's going to occur in these woodlands.
Right. This kind of container. This is what's over there with Home Depot.
Yeah, right. You're going to see another type of Home Depot or another type of Costco, but it's going to be located where these trees are, right in front of us.
All these containers.
That's what it's going to be. And if society becomes more and more orientated to purchasing things on the internet,
You got Amazon.
these stores are going to go out of business, and now you're going to be left with a huge dinosaur.
this side so he can look.